Now, if you take away the personal allowance, the tax-free personal allowance, 12,570, you'll be paying tax on about £9,500 of that minimum full-time wage. If they had raised the thresholds over the last few years in line with inflation, that allowance would be more like 15,000, so you'd only be paying tax on about 7,000 or so. The consequence of it all is that someone on that wage would now be paying £700 more than they would have done if they had kept indexation.
Rejoice! Your purple-haired Scottish Marxist is now live. Okay, let's see what she's going to fucking do to us. Prime Minister's questions, first of all, to deal with, which is more likely going to be fluff, I'm assuming. Usually is before the budget. Let's see. This is going to be fun. But it will affect your employer, of course. That might mean indirectly you end up having to pay more if you go to a business which relies on minimum wage labour, for example, and they will have to pay higher wages and also higher national insurance contributions. That's going to come out in the price. But you won't see it on the bottom line of your payslip because the national insurance for employees will remain at just 8%, cut from 12% last year by the Conservatives. And of course, that's more than made up for by the freezing of the thresholds I just mentioned. But it will mean that they should have changed the thresholds. That's the fucking problem. Oh, what do I know? I'm just a woman. I remember that. Andy, you will be there in the newsroom throughout the proceedings today to answer people's questions. And just a reminder, please do get in touch. I think we can show you once again how to do it, or if we can't now, we will show you in a few minutes' time that you can contact Andy Verity in the newsroom with whatever you want to ask about. Ahead of the budget straight after, you can see the details there, and your BBC, your voice budget on WhatsApp and on email. Now, let's go to Leeds, because our correspondent Alex is there talking to people and testing the temperature of how people feel ahead of this budget and what they want to hear. Alex. Yeah, hello, Jane. Welcome to Pudsey Leisure Centre. In fact, a very busy leisure centre right in the middle of Rachel Reeves' constituency. You can see why we've come here. And we've got people from a range of different sectors to try and get a sense of what they are looking out for in this budget. We can talk first to Sarah Bittershea, who is the Director of Green Energy Switch. Sarah, thank you for being with us. So energy, of course, is a huge concern when it comes to some people's bills. What do you want to hear from the Chancellor? Yes, I want energy to actually be a focus in the budget. I think if you speak to anybody, green energy switch is something I work for. Oh, wait, I'll actually see the purple. There. Of course, what we're hearing from the Chancellor ahead of this budget is that pressure on public finances. So whilst we're talking about investment in the NHS and education, we're led to believe there are going to be tough decisions across the board. Is that a point of concern? It is a point of concern. I think just the fact the cost of living has gone up so much. Energy is just such a massive part of that, and people are having to make the choice of eating or heating their homes. And I just don't think in 2024 anyone should be living in those circumstances. So I do think there needs to be an increase in the warm homes discount. I think the criteria needs to be expanded because the most vulnerable in society obviously needs to be looked after, but there is falling into those brackets and we're just being Sarah, thank you. Someone else okay, let's
Hey,
People are
there we
working
go.
incredibly hard to meet needs that just
That's
keep
better.
rising and rising. And then that's compounded by the housing system at the moment, where too many people are in temporary housing. And the whole thing's coming together. We've got a huge problem we've got to address that. Rachel Reeves is saying that this is going to be a budget that's going to put pounds in people's pockets. They're going to get the economy growing. They're going to invest in public services. Does that fill you with confidence? It does to an extent.
Believe it when I see it.
We need to see health and social care improve.
Okay, we're on. I am currently watching Politics Live on my TV. So this is basically Joe Coburn, and they're going around the country essentially. Right now they're in Leeds, and they're talking to people, see what they think she's going to be saying, which is just idle speculation, really, until we actually hear her. So, who knows?
Around £8 billion, Network North funding to kickstart crumbling roads. We'd also look to see the funding for the skills boot camps made permanent. This is getting a new generation of people behind the wheel, learning how to operate a HGV, and putting the driver shortage that operates a lot of our headlines. But we have to be blunt. If you ask hauliers here in Yorkshire and up and down the country, what is their main concern? Is my business going to be viable over the next 12 months? So the message to the Chancellor is a direct one. Do not add to the financial hardship that businesses are facing up and down the road.
And by financial hardship, is there anything specific that you are concerned about? I mean, the Chancellor is talking about this budget for growth. Are there things you think might potentially hamper that, decisions she might make?
There's been a lot of speculation in the media about whether the Chancellor will increase fuel duty. Now, on paper, that sounds like it would be a minor increase, 5 pence per litre, for example. But we know through analysis that is an extra £2,700 per haulier per year in this country. That is a cost that local businesses simply cannot afford. And we know that has consequences on livelihoods. Through analysis, we've shown it may lead to a loss of 5,000 jobs over the next 5 years. 494 hauliers went into administration last year, and we know that figure is going to be higher this year. And this is an industry that the government has to rely on to support economic growth and jobs. So the message has to be support local business.
Thank you all very much. That's James, Sarah and Kate. Just a reminder, Joe, that of course a lot of this budget is going to be focused on Westminster, the political and economic consequences of the choices the Council will make. But all of that comes with a very real-world impact. You can hear from people who will be watching very closely here in Pudsey and elsewhere. Alex Desai, thank you very much. We'll come back to you and guests after the budget has been delivered. As Alex Desai was saying, of course, the big impact is immediately felt here in Westminster. Let's have a look inside the chamber at the House of Commons. It is filling up, as you would expect.
Bloody hell.
Prime Minister's questions first of all. Usually a fairly straightforward business-like affair, always, but ahead of big financial statements, because that is the big set piece of the day. We're expecting Rachel Reeves.
The chamber is looking very, very full.
Her statement for about an hour, probably accompanied by a long glass of water. Traditionally, in the past, there have been other things that chancellors have had to drink.
Oh, damn. That's actually a good question. Give me a second. Let's see what other chancellors have actually had. By tradition, she's actually allowed to have an alcoholic beverage if she likes. I don't think Sunak had anything alcoholic either. Oh God, that's fucking. Wait a minute. Drinks. Drinks. Past. Let's look. Oh God, Ken Clark. He had Glenn Farclas Mo, Jeffrey Howe, G&T, why am I not surprised? Let's see. Yeah, fine. Okay, Benjamin Disraeli, a brandy. Nigel Lawson, a wine spritzer. Hugh Dalton, rum and milk. Oh, why am I not surprised? Churchill had a fucking brandy. Gordon Brown just had a water. So did Alistair Darling. Osborne, I knew he didn't drink. And Sunak. Gladstone, right? Gateskill, rum and orange, not bad. Jeffrey Howe, G&T. Wow, haven't actually had. Huh. Might actually loosen them up a bit. Oh. Oi! Morton, welcome. Oh, 1 minute 51, 1 minute 50. So it'll be the preamble for PMQs, then we'll get right into her. Welcome. Glad to see you. How are you doing today? Can you tell that I've dyed my hair? I went purple. I went all spooky like. Nothing to do with the fact that I'm bisexual, of course. I was just checking there. Traditionally, the Chancellor is allowed to. Oh, don't worry about that. Just take your time, honestly. Huh, no spell checker. Interesting. Oh. Seriously, don't worry about that. Honestly, take your time. I ain't going anywhere, and I'm pretty damn sure neither's Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves. Oh yeah, I was saying, I was checking because traditionally they are actually allowed to have a drink when they deliver the budget, but ever since how I'm assuming was that must have been Majors. That must have been Majors. Chancellor, I'm sure it was. So ever since Jeffrey Howe, you get the award today. Ooh, I feel privileged. Thank you. Everything going well in your neck of the woods? It's a rather lovely day up here in Glasgow. Oh my god! That's bloody hilarious. There's a broom bar up here in Glasgow, and there's one in Perth as well, and I'm pretty sure there's two up in Aberdeen because I've been in one of them. I couldn't tell you about the ones in the lovely Kingdom of Fife, though. I've only ever been to Dunfermline, and there's no broom bar there. There's a couple of other nice pubs and bars, though, in Dunfermline. Although, to be more accurate, Gordon Brown is from nearer Kirkcaldy than Dunfermline, but much of a muchness, really. I think he took after his dad, Brown. His dad was a minister, essentially. So,
the first debate on this matter since 1992. Does my honourable friend agree with me that this highlights the SNP government's shameful treatment of Scotland's creative sector, and can he outline what this UK government will do to secure the future of the industry and support the Scottish thousands of writers, artists and performers?
I know that, yeah. The lovely Mary, God, I miss her so much. She described that place to all of us up here when she visits back home and stuff. Well, she's back home now, permanently. Stop dipping out, what the hell?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I welcome the honourable member's comments and also our comments about the member for Edinburgh East and Musselburgh, and I was pleased to attend his debate in Westminster Hall when these issues were discussed. The UK government has supported creative industries across Scotland, including in her own city, £8.6 million to the Edinburgh Festivals, £2 million of capital funding to the King's Theatre in Edinburgh, and across Scotland, £5 million of capital funding to the Borough Collection and millions more committed through the Falkirk and Grangemouth deal to the Falkirk Arts Centre, and we'll continue to support arts and culture across Scotland.
Christine Sullivan.
Question number 6, please, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The crisis this government inherited from the previous government isn't just fiscal, but it's also industrial, because neither they nor the SNP had any proper industrial strategy for Scotland. Our industrial strategy will deliver certainty and stability. Businesses need that to be able to invest in the high-growth sectors which will drive long-term sustainable economic growth. Well-paid jobs at the heart of our modern industrial strategy, and this is complemented by our plan to make work pay. Our strategy is clear. We are pro-business and pro-worker as a government.
Christine Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The new industrial strategy identifies creative industries as a key sector for UK growth. My constituency of Bathgate and Linlithgow is a popular setting for film and TV productions, including the Lockerbie film Outlander, as well.
God damn it! Just
fucking
play!
Studios. As film and TV makes an increasingly important contribution to my constituency's local economy, can the Secretary of State advise what steps...
Okay, this is pissing me off.
...to support investment into creative industries in my constituency?
Thank you for that question. The Honourable Lady herself mentions the Outlander, which was filmed in Bathgate and Linlithgow. She mentions the Lockerbie bombing film starring Colin Firth, and she also mentions the in-production thriller called Damage starring Samuel L. Jackson. I hope he did a few leaflets for the Honourable Lady while he was in the constituency. The creative industries are a jewel in Scotland and the UK's crown. The independent film tax credit that was announced earlier this week by my right honourable friend for Culture, Media and Sport gives a distinct homegrown content and talent for films to meet the criteria for
honourable member.
Productions eligible for the tax break must have a UK writer or director or be certified as an official UK co-production. But what it does do, Mr Speaker, it shows this government is determined to back our creative industries and continue to grow our film and TV industries.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does the Secretary of State share my anger and disappointment that the SNP Scottish Government continue to dogmatically block new nuclear development in Scotland, depriving my constituency of important jobs and economic prospects? And what can he do within the industrial strategy to make sure that we at least take advantage of decommissioning and supply chain opportunities?
Mr. Speaker, I've never known the right honourable gentleman to be either angry or ever disappointed, but I share his anger and disappointment. This government backs our industry. Nuclear will be a major part of that energy mix going forward, and we need to make sure we have the right balance. GB Energy has been set up. It passed its third reading in this House yesterday. Disappointed the right honourable gentleman nor the SNP.
Secretary of State.
Can I welcome the honourable gentleman to his place? The budget by my right honourable friend the Chancellor will be announcing shortly that will herald a new era of investment and growth in Scotland. In our first 100 days, we announced the headquarters of GB Energy in Aberdeen, launched the National Wealth Fund and announced the biggest upgrade of workers' rights in a generation.
Madam Jogi.
Mr. Speaker, Newcastle and Lyme is home to many people who left Scotland to build a life like my constituent Lee Bernadette Wolford. Can the Secretary of State outline how resetting the relationship between the UK and Scottish governments is important for economic growth up and down our United Kingdom?
I thank the member for that question. He is right. We don't agree with the Scottish Government on everything, or indeed very much at all, but Scots expect us to work together to produce results, and that is what we have tried to do. Yesterday I had my regular meeting with the Deputy First Minister, and this morning I spoke to the Finance Secretary ahead of the budget. Economic growth is a key area there, and I'm delighted to highlight shared work on energy, bringing the Commonwealth Games to Glasgow, the £100 million jointly funded package for the Falkirk and Rangers growth deal. Our long-term economic strategy requires both governments to work together. The Prime Minister and the First Minister have been clear that's what we're determined to do.
Pete Wishart.
The Secretary of State boasted of a £150 million investment fund, only to bizarrely contradict himself and say that no such figure existed. Is this Scottish Schrodinger's funding? And is this perhaps the levelling up fund referred to by my honourable friend?
Secretary of State.
I'm very surprised that the honourable gentleman was keen to ask a question, given he didn't apply for one in the shuffle, neither did any SNP member. And it's also quite surprising that the honourable member, with all his experience in this House, wants to spend his time in this new Parliament.
I'm pausing that. How fucking dare you? We wanted to put bills in that would actually make our lives better up here, and a lot of you just disregarded them. So fucking shut him, Murray. Seriously, what a bastard. You can't have it both ways, right?
Defending the previous Tory government's reckless gambles with the economy.
We paid the prices well!
I don't know whether you're standing or not.
No, you know, Chair of the Committee.
As the Chair of the Committee, I used to want to come in on this question.
Yes.
Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And would my right honourable friend agree with me that the Drumchapel Levelling Up Fund bid and the project that would fall from that would be a very good way to promote the economic and social...
Oh, that's where they shuffled you off to.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. She's been an absolutely doughty campaigner for the Drumchapel project. She won't have long to wait. The Chancellor will come to this dispatch box shortly.
She used to be my Labour MSP, by the way, before she got booted by Bob Doris. I was wondering what happened to her. Shuffled her off to Drumchapel. That must annoy her sensibilities so much.
Announce the budget, and I'm hopeful that all of these projects, including some of the anti-poverty projects that she's championed for years in her constituency, come to pass.
There's a man that stands, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, when it comes to promoting economic growth in Scotland, it's quite clear the best way to do that is within this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So, Minister, to make that happen and convince my colleagues in front of me the best way forward, what's the Minister doing to make that happen?
Secretary of State.
The best way to keep the United Kingdom together is to make sure that this is a successful UK Labour government, and that's what we're determined to do. And may I just point the honourable gentleman to the row in front of them. They have 9 SNP MPs left, we have 37. That's how you protect the Union.
Everybody. Shadow Secretary of State John Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State said at the weekend that the Labour budget will herald an era of growth for Scotland. But what's going to grow? Is it the tax burden on hard-working Scots? Is it the number of pensioners choosing between heating and eating because they haven't got the winter fuel payments? Or is it the number of Labour broken promises? Or will we get all three this afternoon?
Mr. Speaker, a second opportunity this afternoon to apologise for the Conservative Party crashing the economy and the dreadful £22 billion black hole that they left us to inherit that they hid from the Office for Budget Responsibility.
No, they fucking didn't. You're lying again, so shut it. You all knew, including Rachel Reeves, including you, because you're a cabinet member. Fucking bastards. Oh God, yeah. It makes me laugh that Mundell is still there, hanging on like some horrible carbuncle on the arse of this union. Well, I'm not a unionist, obviously. Sorry. But that man is a fucking menace, and his son is an MSP and all for the same area he's from, so too close to the border, in my opinion. But oh, by the way, this is Scottish questions.
Before he asks his questions, and of course, he won't have long to wait, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor will be here shortly.
Shadow Secretary of State John Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no answers in that response. Not so long ago, the Secretary of State said national insurance rise would have an enormous impact on businesses. And listen to this. He said under Labour, national insurance wouldn't go up. Tax rises, economic damage, broken promises. Isn't this Labour government just the same as the SNP?
Mr. Speaker, I thought the Shadow Secretary of State was just describing his own previous government.
I'll give him that one.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend will know that the House recently supported the Employment Rights Bill at second reading, which the party opposite shamefully opposes. This is the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. The government is taking a joined-up and collaborative approach to the delivery of the Make Work Pay Plan, which has been developed with businesses and trade unions. We are committed to continuing this approach through consultation on the implementation of Make Work Pay to ensure that the changes we are making work well for both employees and businesses.
I'm sure the whole House will join me in congratulating the member for High Peak on the birth of his daughter, Connie. And as he enjoys his paternity leave, I'm sure the Minister will be familiar with the Dad Shift campaign, which seeks to increase paternity leave for more fathers. We wondered, would he support that campaign so that more fathers, in addition to those tens of thousands the government have already opened up paternity leave to, can enjoy that? And wouldn't he agree it's a huge contrast with the party opposite, who are spending their time talking about getting rid of maternity leave?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I do agree with what the honourable gentleman just said. I also said our congratulations to the member for High Peak on the birth of his daughter. This is why we are making immediate changes to paternity leave through the Employment Rights Bill. We're making paternity leave available from day one in a new job, and enabling paternity leave to be taken after shared parental leave. And I want to just pay tribute to my honourable friend for campaigning vigorously on this issue. And I'm sure, like me, he was delighted to vote for the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation, which the party opposite shamefully opposes.
John Cooper.
Mr. Speaker, many thanks. One of the criticisms.
Damn it! I thought I'd fixed that.
Criticisms of the new employment legislation being brought in is that it delivers us into the hands of the trade union barons. Does the Secretary of State agree that we are indeed in the iron grip of the barons, since he was unable to attend an event in his own office last night because...
There is no such thing as trade union barons, thank you very much, okay? There's leaders of unions who speak on behalf of their members. Not that any of you lot would understand what they are. I think Angela Rayner might, possibly.
He wouldn't cross a picket line.
Yeah.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the party opposite when it comes to employment rights, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely no lessons. This is a party that has left us with a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, which we are having to pick up, and which my right honourable friend the Chancellor will address in a moment.
Stephen Gittins.
I'll join the member from East Renfrewshire in congratulating the member on the birth of his daughter. And in terms of the demographic challenge, just before the election, the Scottish Labour Deputy Leader said there is something we can do to incentivise more people to come to Scotland. So in terms of employment in Scotland, has the Secretary of State and colleagues sat down with the Home Office in terms of encouraging more migration?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government will work closely with the Migration Advisory Committee, and we welcome the contribution that migrants play to the economy. We'll take no lessons from a party that has consistently said that the positive destinations for people in Scotland is a 0-hours contract, and who sat last night on their hands when we dealt with the GB Energy Bill.
Stephen Gittins.
Let me try and challenge the member in a spirit of collegiality. They have committed to working with the Scottish Government. Now, the member for Nahealing Indian Yar, who is in his place, has talked about when it comes to migration policy, no one size fits all, and it shouldn't be beyond us to devise ways to attract more people to work and settle here. So will he from those benches commit in what they've done that the Scottish and UK governments should work together, and will he commit to a meeting between both those governments so we can take forward more migration to Scotland in the way they committed to and we committed to and business is crying out for?
Mr. Speaker, we have committed to Scottish representation on the Migration Advisory Committee, which would go a long way in order to deal with these issues, but it's also for the Scottish Government to do things like build houses in areas where we need more migration in order to encourage people to come to live in Scotland.
Gregory Campbell.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, Scotland is lightly proud of its 6 World Heritage Sites. As my honourable friend will appreciate, responsibility for planning decisions for large-scale energy projects in Scotland rests with the Scottish Government ministers. The UK Government works closely with the Scottish Government to deliver for Scotland while respecting devolution. I meet regularly with my Scottish Government counterparts on these issues.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank the Minister. 25 years now. I thank the Secretary of State for his reply. In any discussions he will have, would he take account of the fact that, number one, I have written to UNESCO about the potential of a huge offshore wind farm very close to the Giant's Causeway and the UNESCO World Heritage Site that exists there. And the Communities Minister in Northern Ireland has also met UNESCO. Will he make representations to ensure that all considerations are given account of, to ensure that people know the potential compromise and problems that may exist to that World Heritage Site there?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad the member for East Londonderry hasn't lost any of his popularity in the House. It would be inappropriate for me to comment on planning decisions for large-scale energy projects in Scotland. This is a devolved responsibility.
Sorry, I have to mention this. It's called Derry.
I do, of course, recognise the importance of considering the protection of local assets when developing renewable projects, particularly our cherished World Heritage Site.
That completes questions. I wish to remind the House that the following horrendous, terrible incident in Southport on the 29th of July, a suspect is awaiting trial, having been charged with multiple offences. That means the House sub judice resolution is engaged and references should not be made to the case. I know that all honourable members wish to see justice done in this case. It is therefore of paramount importance that nothing is said in this House which could potentially prejudice a proper trial or lead to it being abandoned. I know it can be frustrating when we can see reports in the media of the matters that we are not free to discuss here. But that arises from Parliament's constitutional relationship with the courts. More importantly, at the heart of this case are 3 young girls. We all want to see justice done for them and for their families, and for others injured in and affected by this appalling incident.
Yeah.
Speculation about the cases, including comments made in this House, could seriously risk prejudicing proceedings. I know that none of us would ever wish to do that. Therefore, it would be wrong of me to exercise a waiver in this case, and members should not refer to it or risk prejudicing this case. Of course, I understand that members have legitimate questions about the circumstances surrounding this case. There will be no doubt wanting ministers to commit that they will come to the House and answer those questions once the legal proceedings are concluded. I give my assurance that I will ensure there are ample opportunities to do so. My understanding is that this trial is expected to start in January, and if members have questions about the operation and the decision on sub judice's resolution, they can speak to the clerks and the Speaker's Council. In the meantime, our thoughts are with the family and friends of Bibi, Elsie and Alice, and all of those who were injured and affected on this horrendous day. Before I call the Prime Minister, I would like to mark the fact that this is the last time the Right Honourable Member for Richmond and Northallerton will appear at the dispatch box during PMQs. There's a bit more to do afterwards, but he has spoken at this dispatch box as Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, and after today, we all look forward to his continued contributions from the backbenches.
Fuck off, Richie. Seriously, go and just piss off. Seriously, we really don't want to know what you're up to. Just fuck off. I don't care. You're absolute scum to me. Just go away. We'll deal with whoever wins.
Commit to a meeting between both those governments.
Speaker, thank you.
Well, in the future endeavours. And I say personally, thank you for a working relationship. We now come to Prime Minister's questions. I call Katrina Murray.
Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish everyone celebrating in the UK and around the world a joyful Diwali, a time to come together to celebrate and focus on a brighter future. Last Diwali, the leader of the opposition and his family lit the deers outside 10 Downing Street. It was a significant moment in our national story. The first British Asian Prime Minister is a reminder that this is a country where people of every background can fulfil their dreams, and it makes us all proud to be British. Mr. Speaker, as you've just referenced, as this is our last exchange across the dispatch boxes, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the Leader of the Opposition for his service. Now, of course, we've had political disagreements, ideological differences, we've argued at some length. But I want to thank him for his hard work, for his commitment, and for his decency in everything that he has done. And I too
decency, really?
The very best for whatever the future may hold for them. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to associate myself with the remarks made by the Prime Minister. Cumbernauld, in my constituency, was promised an elective and diagnostic treatment centre by the Scottish Government in 2021. This has continued to be delayed and is now alleged to be mothballed. What assurances can the Prime Minister give me that any Barney consequentials from today's budget are used to benefit my constituents and not be held on to by the Scottish Government?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question. I'm sorry to hear about the delays affecting her constituents. The party opposite oversaw years of mismanagement and chaos, and the impact on Scottish NHS is evident.
This Labour government is committed to delivering for the Scottish people, including making sure that we have an NHS fit for the future. The Chancellor will set out details in just a few moments.
Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak.
Here we go.
Thank you for your kind words, and indeed, thank you to the Prime Minister for his kind words. Indeed, no Prime Minister looks forward to PMQs, but I always did like this pre-budget one, because it was, for a change, nice not to be the main event and just the warm-up act. But as you said, Mr. Speaker, today is my last appearance at PMQs, and I'm happy to confirm reports that I will now be spending more time in the greatest place on earth, where the scenery is worthy. The scenery is indeed worthy of a movie set, and everyone is a character. That's right, Mr. Speaker. If anyone needs me, I will be in Yorkshire. So, and as an adopted Yorkshireman, I'm particularly looking forward to doing the coast-to-coast walk that runs through my constituency and many others. Since 2015, we've made significant progress with the campaign for making a trail. And indeed, Natural England are close to concluding their work. So can I ask the Prime Minister to ensure that the Coast to Coast does indeed become Britain's greatest national trail? And in preparation for my return to the backbenches, would he meet with me to discuss it?
Kind of fucking questions that!
To ask me to join him on the walk. But certainly, I will meet him, and it is an important point.
Mr. Speaker, that is very kind of the Prime Minister. I know he's, I know he's partial to the Lake District, but perhaps we can tempt him over to our end as well. Now, Yorkshire is not just famous for its walks, but also for being home to some of England's greatest cricketers. Now, sadly, no one's going to put me on that list, Mr. Speaker, but who knows? I've got a lot more time to practice now. So, but cricket does have the power to bring people together from all communities and give them fantastic opportunities, as shown so powerfully by Andrew Flintoff's recent documentary. Yeah. Now, we also lead the world in female participation, and that will stand us in good stead when we host the Women's World Cup in 2026 and when cricket becomes an Olympic sport in 2028. So could I therefore ask the Prime Minister to continue government support for the England and Wales Cricket Board's new initiative to get cricket into vastly more state schools, fostering a whole new generation of cricketers for us all to cheer on at every level?
Yes, is the answer to that question. And the point is a really important one. We celebrate cricket, it does bring communities together, but it's also really important for children and young people to enjoy sport, lots of different sports, because it gives them a confidence that they might not otherwise have. It gives them the ability to work in a team and teaches them about skills like leadership. So I'm fully supportive.
Now, our two predecessors, Sir Tony Blair and Lord Hague, have repeatedly come together and powerfully argued in their joint reports that it is vital for the future prosperity of Britain's economy, society and public services for us to be a world leader in technology and innovation. Now, the Prime Minister and I may not yet be at our joint report writing stage yet, but in a similar spirit of cross-party agreement, could I ask him to find his inner tech bro and continue to support emerging British tech businesses and establish our country as the home of AI growth and innovation?
Prime Minister. Yes, and this is a really important point.
Don't want to head straight into the fucking cabinet, piss off.
A summit last year on AI, which was very important. We have been bringing together the leaders in AI. We have a huge advantage in this country, being ranked in the top 3 in the world. AI is going to have huge potential. For our growth, for our public services, and I think the whole House should be fully supportive of this.
Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has the immense privilege. The Prime Minister has the immense privilege of being the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Now, Northern Ireland is a special part of our union, but one that needs particular care, attention and respect. Having a strong functioning assembly at Stormont is good for the people of Northern Ireland and good for our union. And that's why I was so pleased to see government restored there earlier this year, and I'm grateful to him for his support with that. So can he assure the House that he will continue to work to keep Stormont open, delivering for the Northern Irish people and strengthening Northern Ireland's place in our union?
Prime Minister.
Yes, and again, this is a really important point and one that matters to me personally. I worked for 5 years in Northern Ireland on some of the proposals under the Good Friday Agreement, in particular the transformation of the RUC into the police service of Northern Ireland. I worked with both communities there. It was for 5 years. It was very important to me, had a huge impact on me, and so I care deeply about Northern Ireland, and I absolutely agree that the institutions government needs to be up and running and want to give all support I can to the further development in Northern Ireland.
Now, as Prime Minister, he will be acutely aware of the threats that our United Kingdom faces from an axis of authoritarian states, Iran, North Korea, Russia and China. And in particular, I'm proud of the way that this House has united in standing up to Russian aggression in Ukraine. And I know that we will never waver in our commitment to the Ukrainian cause. Now, I will always be grateful for the support that he gave me when we were the first country to send Ukraine Western battle tanks, long-range missiles, and the first to offer security assurances to Kyiv. So in light of the threats that we face, can I urge him to always maintain the strength of the transatlantic alliance and ensure that NATO remains the bedrock of Western security, with the United Kingdom playing a leading role?
Yes, and NATO is, in my view, as important today as the day in which it was created, in light of the challenges that we face. And it was a Labour government that was the proud co-founder of NATO, and we've repeatedly said we support NATO to the hilt.
Rishi Sunak.
Well, finally, Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is Diwali. And I became leader of my party during Diwali, and I now stand down during that same festival. So I'm proud to have been the first British Asian Prime Minister, but I was even prouder that it was not that big a deal. And that speaks volumes about the values of the British people, of our country, and of this Parliament. So will the Prime Minister join me in applauding the kindness, decency and tolerance that has always been the British way?
Yes, and I meant what I said when I said that we were all proud to see him standing there as Prime Minister.
I wasn't. I hear the man.
Representing our diverse country. We were all proud. I think everybody in this House was. So I thank him for that. And his last question, final question as leader of the opposition, although judging by the speed with which his party goes through leaders, he may be back here before too long. But in the meantime, I'm sure a great champion for the people of Richmond. But Mr. Speaker, finally, I'm sure he won't mind me disclosing to the House the contents of a letter that he wrote to me this week. My answer to it is clear. Yes, I will arrange for him to meet the relevant minister about the A66 that runs through his constituency.
Dave Beghillier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in Hackney, nearly 4,000 children who could fill 8 primary schools are in temporary accommodation, many outside London. This is bad for their future opportunities. It's ripping apart our communities. I welcome the government's pledge to build new homes, but will he ensure that those who cannot have a roof over their head are a top priority in that long queue for new housing?
Prime Minister.
I thank you for raising this issue. It is a source of national shame that there are just under 1.3 million households on a social housing waiting list, including, I think, 8,000 of them in Hackney. The best way to tackle overcrowding and meet housing need is to build the homes this country needs, and that's why we will deliver the 1.5 million homes over this Parliament, and the Chancellor will set out further details in just a moment.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with your remarks? The remarks of the Prime Minister about the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Richmond and Northallerton, and thank him for his service and wish him and the whole country a happy Diwali. Despite our political differences, I've always felt a certain kinship since the general election, when he was the only other party leader to get as wet as I did. I'm looking forward to debating the budgets with him and the Chancellor shortly. But can I wish him and his family all the best for the future? Mr. Speaker, next month's summit in Baku is a chance for the UK to regain world leadership on climate change, a role disastrously lost under the Conservatives. As this is the final summit before countries must ratchet up their new Paris agreements before 2035, will the Prime Minister take this opportunity to seize back world leadership on climate change by committing today to support the targets set out this week by the Independent Climate Change Committee and publish a programme to deliver on those?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will seize that initiative. We've reset on the international stage, and climate is one of the biggest challenges that we face. I will be going to the conference this year, as I went, in fact, last year, as leader of the opposition, to continue those discussions about how we reach the very important targets that we must reach.
Shred David.
I think the Prime Minister, for his reply, I hope we can really take that leadership back again. Another issue which the UK needs to show urgent leadership on is the escalating war in Sudan. Tens of thousands of people have been killed. 11 million Sudanese have had to flee from their homes, Mr. Speaker. The reports of mass killings and horrifying sexual violence against women are truly stomach-churning. So when the UK takes over presidency of the UN Security Council this
including both candidates and the foreign leaders. They can either support the police in their difficult task, or they can undermine the police in their difficult task. I know which side I'm on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minutes from here in the communities of Victoria, Pimlico, Paddington and Covent Garden, there is an unprecedented rise in the number of people seeking run after 14 years of Victorian government. Will the Prime Minister update the House on the cross-departmental postal strategy, and does he agree with me that this Labour government has a once-in-a-generation opportunity to
Friday, will the Prime Minister make it a priority to secure a new resolution on preventing future atrocities, including a no-fly zone to stop the Iranian drones?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this because it is an important issue, and I don't think we discuss it enough in this House. We continue to see mounting evidence of appalling atrocities against civilians and unacceptable restrictions on humanitarian access, and working with international partners, including as penholder, as he knows, at the UN Security Council to end the violence, secure humanitarian access and ensure the protection of civilians is a major priority.
Rachel Baskin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is this Labour government in setting up a child poverty task force which is determined to move 4.3 million children in poverty today into a better future. However, we also inherited 2.1 million older people in poverty. So will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, agree to setting up a pensioner poverty task force so that older people don't have to worry about paying for their housing, food and heating costs, and ensure that they have dignity in later life?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the scale of poverty that we inherited in this country is truly appalling, with over 4 million children now growing up in low-income families. We'll deliver on a manifesto commitment to tackle child poverty, as we did last time in government, and we'll publish our strategy in the spring.
Colin Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ICJ has mandated that Israel ensures access to life-saving aid in Gaza under Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, yet the Israeli government has voted to effectively block its delivery. As a human rights lawyer, does the Prime Minister agree that banning UNRWA is a breach of international law? And how much more evidence does he need before calling out what is happening as a genocide and acting in line with the UK's responsibilities as a signatory of the Genocide Convention?
I'm very worried and concerned about the decision that's just been taken by the Parliament in relation to UNRWA. There's a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza.
Called a genocide.
That decision will only make it much worse, which is why I've expressed my concern about it already before today and will continue to do so. It needs to be reversed. It needs to be reversed very, very quickly indeed. I have never described what's going on in Gaza as genocide. I do agree that all sides should comply with international law.
Melanie Ward.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last month, a Scottish Government Health Minister was forced to apologise for waiting times in my area of Fife, where some patients wait more than 2 years for treatment. My constituents deserve so much better than this. Does the Prime Minister agree that the SNP must take responsibility for 17 years of failure? And if today's budget delivers a bigger block grant to Scotland, they must sort out the mess they have made of Scotland's precious NHS.
Well, Mr Speaker, this is the second time this has come up this afternoon in Prime Minister's...
Nope. Me first. The reason this fucking happens is because they wouldn't let us expand, right? Especially in Fife. We wanted the same here in Glasgow. And the block grant didn't see fit to increase our budget to actually deal with these issues that we've been dealing with for the last 30 years with any fucking stripe of UK government, right? Hi, Mum. Cool, thank you. Ooh, thank you. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay, cool, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Okay, bye, Mum. Oh, did that come up? Oh, dear God. Yeah, that was my mum. It was our anniversary on Sunday, so she's just going to post our present through. She can't make it. She can't make it up with me. My sister's going through chemo at the moment, so she's coming through to Glasgow, but she can't meet up with me. She's dealing with sister. So she's going to post it through. The next time she's come through to Glasgow is going to be the weekend. I was meant to be going up tomorrow, but she's cancelled it. Lots of happening in the family at the minute. Sorry for you hearing that. You alright? My mum's amazing, by the way. She's really good. She's really good.
Questions. I hope the SNP are listening good and hard, because I'm sorry to hear her constituents have been
Thanks,
waiting
Martin,
so many
for
years
that.
for their medical treatment that they need. We are committed to the NHS, and the Chancellor will have a lot more to say about that in just a moment.
Richard Tice.
Repeatedly recently that it is important in incidents of terrorism that the authorities put out more information sooner in order to prevent an information gap. Does the Prime Minister agree?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, obviously I'll tread carefully in answering this question for the very reasons that you yourself set out at the beginning of this session. I think it's very important, first and foremost, that in all cases, including the particularly difficult case that the Speaker mentioned earlier, that the police and prosecutors are able to do their difficult job. And all of us in this House have a choice to make, including both candidates to be the next Tory leader. They can either...
Is it just me, or is Angela looking rather dear-faced? Look at the pus on the women. For Christ's sake, women, smile.
either support the police in their difficult task, or they can undermine the police in their difficult task. I know which side I'm on.
Rachel Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minutes from here, in the communities of Victoria, Pimlico, Paddington and Covent Garden, there is an unprecedented rise in the number of people sleeping rough after 14 years of the Tory government. Will the Prime Minister update this House on the cross-departmental homelessness strategy? And does he agree with me that this Labour government has a once-in-a-generation opportunity to end rough sleeping for good?
Prime Minister. Homelessness levels are far too high.
Build more houses. How blatant have to we be? Christ's sake.
In this country. And we are developing a long-term strategy, working with mayors and local leaders to end homelessness once and for all. And taking action to tackle the root causes, Mr. Speaker, which is delivering the biggest increase in social and affordable house building in a generation. And we, of course, have picked up where the party opposite failed by abolishing no-fault evictions, preventing many renters ending up homeless.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, we had the embarrassment of the Labour Party being sued by the Trump campaign. Then we had the national capitulation of...
Let me hear the rest of the question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Why? It's a stupid fucking question.
Capitulation of the government over the sovereignty of the Chagos Island. And now we have had the personal humiliation of the Prime Minister at the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit. All of which begs the question, Mr. Speaker, how on earth does a Foreign Secretary still have the full confidence of the Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I was intending to say that he was an upgrade on his predecessor. Of course, drove up thousands of pounds in mortgages, but I withdraw that now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the Prime Minister and the Chancellor discuss the importance of supporting working families, I think of the dedicated farmers in South Norfolk. The Prime Minister has constantly acknowledged the critical role of food security and the need for farmers to have certainty to plan. Can the Prime Minister confirm what action our government will be taking to back British farming in constituencies like mine?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I welcome my honourable friend to his place. And talking of predecessors, no one did more damage to rural constituencies than his nearby predecessor, whose disastrous mini-budget crashed the economy and hurt his constituents. I do note that she's been tweeting the approval of the current Shadow Chancellor's attacks on the independent OBR, just showing the party opposite have learned absolutely nothing. Over 1,000 farms have been forced out of business due to Tory neglect, and we will turn that around, and you'll hear more about that in the budget in just a minute.
Helen Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Robert Jones and Agnes Hunt Hospital in Oswestry in my constituency is home to the Veterans Orthopaedic Service, and that's by far the largest provider of veterans hospital care in the country. It's a fine example of what you can build when the NHS and the local authority work together. It costs no extra public money to set it up, but because of NHS changes in the way ICBs charge each other, it's been left with a funding shortfall.
Will the Prime Minister come and visit this fantastic facility in beautiful North Shropshire and see for himself why it's so important we keep it going?
Minister. I thank the honourable member for raising that issue, and we're all grateful to our veterans for their service in protecting our country. I do understand the value of the centre that she references and the support that it provides for veterans, and we are committed to ensuring veterans receive the employment, the mental health and the housing support that they need. The upcoming budget will set out the changes that we'll be making. Thank you.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years of failure by the last government to renew and grow the UK's infrastructure, does the Prime Minister agree with me that additional investment is needed to kick-start economic growth? And that investment... Mr. Speaker, this is the important bit. And then investing in a new Lower Thames crossing to relieve Dartford residents from gridlock caused by overcapacity at the Dartford crossing, thereby boosting the North Kent and UK economy by £40 billion would be an excellent project to start with.
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm really pleased that under this government, Britain has already secured £63 billion worth of investment, which we've measured in tens of thousands of jobs. Our number one mission is growth. You'll be hearing a lot more about that in just a few minutes' time.
David Bandel.
Not again. Fuck off.
Colin and Mandy Mackey's 18-year-old son, Greg, died as a result of having a soft drink spiked shortly after he went to college. They welcome the fact that this government is going to continue with the legislation proposed by the previous government. But can the Prime Minister assure them that they and other campaigners will work with ministers and officials, not only in bringing forward that legislation, but to ensure that awareness is raised of this abhorrent practice and its potentially fatal consequences?
Prime Minister. Can I thank the Right Honourable Member for raising that tragic case, and I join him in paying tribute to Greg's parents. Their tireless work to raise awareness of spiking, to support victims and call for changes in the law is inspiring given what they've been through. This government will act. We will make spiking a specific criminal offence to better protect victims and support the police in tackling these crimes. Thank you.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Farnborough, our leisure centre was knocked down by the Conservative Council, who made empty promises to replace it with an expensive civic hub with no viable plan to pay for it. Will the Prime Minister help secure the funding that Rushmore Council needs to rebuild our leisure centre so that Labour can start delivering change after years of Tory saving?
Prime Minister.
Can I welcome my honourable friend to her place? I think she's the first Labour MP for Aldershot ever, and she's doing a superb job for her constituents. Rushmore Borough Council was left with a shortfall of over £19 million over the last 4 years. And the running down of local services has been one of the most painful features of the last 14 years. We will work hand in hand with councils, including multi-year funding settlements, and with local leaders to develop and make sure the services that are needed are there.
Final question, Mark Francois.
Thank you, sir. Prime Minister, you
mentioned... Oh, Christ, this dinosaur.
As we approach Remembrance Tide, one group of veterans we all owe a great debt to are those who served during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Hundreds were killed. Thousands were maimed by both Republican and so-called loyalist bombs. Many of those veterans
really
of their lives. And yet you're proposing to repeal the Northern Ireland Legacy Bill, which was designed in part to protect them from endless investigation and reinvestigation. Why, sir, are you throwing those veterans to the wolves to pander to Sinn Féin?
He's not doing that. God damn it. If we want them to be part of this union of 4 nations, we have to treat them with respect. I don't think they should. I think they should be part of Ireland again and not connected to us in any sort of way, really. They're their own country in my eyes, right? And people like you are anachronistic to what people like me want to see happen in our lifetimes. Luckily, I'm young enough, I might actually see it. I love my mum desperately and I love my stepdad as well. He's Irish, my mum is Scottish. They're both in their 70s now. They might not see that happen. I'm only 45. There's every fucking possibility I can actually see the reunification. So people like you need to shut the fuck up.
Can I just say, the honourable member's been here for a long time. You is not me. I don't want it to be me. Please, Prime Minister.
I'm not.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
The member of Ways and Means. It is not the Speaker who deals with the budget. She's the new Ways and Means, my God. It's a new one. Hello. I have no idea who you are. Welcome to the 3-ring circus. That is the budget. This is going to be fun for you, I think.
Order! Order! Before I call the Chancellor, I would like to make a short statement. Over the last few days, ministers have made a series of new policy announcements with significant and wide-ranging implications for the government's fiscal policy and for the public finances. It is evident to me that they should have been made in this House in the first instance. The principle is clearly and unambiguously set out in the paragraph 9.1 of the Ministerial Code. The premature disclosure of the contents of this House, contents of the budget, have always been regarded as a supreme discourtesy to this House and all of its democratically elected MPs, not to mention to Mr. Speaker and the Chairman of Ways and Means. I really don't need any help. Let me remind the Treasury front bench. The budget statement and ensuing resolutions are the most important Ways and Means business of the House, Erskine May 36-33. I am disappointed by comments made by government spokespeople believing they can use precedent as an excuse. I am telling them today that they are entirely wrong. Mr. Speaker has always defended the undoubted right of this House, including opposition parties and backbenchers on all sides of this House, to be the first to hear major government policy announcements on behalf of their constituents. As Chairman of Ways and Means, I have responsibility to oversee the House's consideration of the budget fairly and impartially, and to ensure that honourable members on all sides of this House have adequate opportunity to hold the Chancellor to account. Finally, we collectively, we should all remember to respect the Chair, respect our colleagues, and to respect this House. Now, before I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I am remind honourable members that copies of the budget resolutions will be available to them from the Vote Office in Members' Lobby at the end of the Chancellor's statement and, of course, online. I also remind honourable members that interventions are not taken during the Chancellor's statement, nor during the replies of the Leader of the Opposition or of the Leader of the Liberal Democrats. I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Here we go.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On July the 4th, the country voted for change. This government was given a mandate to restore stability to our economy and to begin a decade of national renewal. To fix the foundations and deliver change through responsible leadership in the national interest. That is our task, and I know that we can achieve it. My belief in Britain burns brighter than ever, and the prize on offer is immense. As my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, said on Monday, change must be felt. More pounds in people's pockets, an NHS that is there when you need it, an economy that is growing, creating wealth and opportunity for all, because that is the only way to improve living standards. And the only way to drive economic growth is to invest, invest, invest. There are no shortcuts. And to deliver that investment, we must restore economic stability and turn the page on the last 14 years. This is not the first time that it has fallen to the Labour Party to rebuild Britain. In 1945...
Shut up, you rabble.
In 1945, it was the Labour Party that rebuilt our country from the rubble of the Second World War. In 1964, it was the Labour Party that rebuilt Britain with the white heat of technology. And in 1997, it was the Labour Party that rebuilt our schools and hospitals. Today, it falls to this Labour Party, to this Labour government, to rebuild Britain once again. And while this is the first budget in more than 14 years to be delivered by a Labour Chancellor, it is the first budget in our country's history to be delivered by a woman.
Shima had to be you.
Proud to be Britain's first ever female Chancellor of the Exchequer.
I'm not, I hate you.
To girls and young women everywhere, I say, let there be no ceiling on your ambition, your hopes and your dreams. And along with the pride that I feel standing here today, there is also a responsibility to pass on a fairer society and a stronger generation to the next generation of women. Madam Deputy Speaker, the party opposite failed our country. Their austerity broke our National Health Service. Their Brexit deal harmed British businesses. And their mini-budget left families paying the price with higher mortgages. The British people have
the hell is he writing?
Their failure. A black hole in the public finances. Public services on their knees. A decade of low growth and the worst parliament on record for living standards. Let me begin with the public finances. In July, I exposed a £22 billion black hole at the heart of the previous government's plans. A series
You knew about it, so shut the fuck up.
of promises that they made but had no money to deliver. Covered up from the British people, covered up from this House. The Treasury's reserve set aside for genuine emergencies spent 3 times over just 3 months into the financial year. Today, on top of the detailed document that I have provided to the House in July, the government is publishing a line-by-line breakdown of the £22 billion black hole that we inherited. It shows hundreds of unfunded pressures on the public finances this year and into the future too. The Office for Budget Responsibility have published their own review of the circumstances around the spring budget forecast. They say that the previous government, and I quote, did not provide the OBR with all the information to them.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
And had they known about these undisclosed pressures that have since come to light, then their spring budget forecast for spending would have been, and I quote again, materially different. Let me be clear. That means any comparison between today's forecast and the OBR's March forecast is false. Because the party opposite hid the reality of their public spending plans. Yet, at the very same budget, they made another £10 billion worth of cuts to national insurance. It was the height of irresponsibility, and they knew it, because they had run out of road and they called an election to avoid making difficult choices. So let me make this promise to the British people. Never again will we allow a government to play fast and loose with the public finances. And never again will we allow a government to hide the true state of our public finances from our independent forecaster. That's why today I can confirm that we will implement in full the 10 recommendations from the Independent Office for Budget Responsibilities Review. But the country
Is that the
has
left-wing
inherited
one?
not just broken public finances, but broken public services too. The British people can
fund
see
them, by
and
the way.
feel that in their everyday lives. NHS waiting lists at record levels. Children in porter cabins as school roofs crumble. Trains that do not arrive, rivers filled with polluted waste, prisons overflowing, crimes which are not investigated, and criminals who are not punished. That is the country's inheritance. That is the country's inheritance from the party opposite. But they had no plan to improve our public services. And they had no plan to put our public finances on a stable footing. Quite the opposite. Since 2021, there have been no detailed plans for departmental spending set out beyond this year. And their plans relied on a baseline for spending this year, which we now know was wrong, because it did not take into account the £22 billion black hole. The previous government also failed to budget for costs that they knew would materialise. That includes funding for vital compensation schemes for victims of two terrible injustices.
I just mentioned respecting colleagues. The public are watching. They want to hear what the Chancellor has to say. Simmer down.
I would politely suggest that honourable members listen to this, because it includes funding for vital compensation schemes for victims of two terrible injustices: the infected blood scandal and the Post Office Horizon scandal. The Leader of the Opposition rightly made an unequivocal apology for the injustice of the infected blood scandal on behalf of the British state. But he did not budget for the costs of compensation. Today, for the very first time, we will provide specific funding to direct access to bank accounts to recover debt.
Is it going to be enough? I hope it's going to be enough, okay? Because this is four fucking governments. 3 Tory and 1 Labour. Since it actually came to light, then 2 more Tory and now a new Labour government, right? You have to fund these people. You have to give them the money back.
To compensate those infected and those affected in full.
The hell does it do that? Oh, right. Dismiss.
With £11.8 billion in this budget. And I am also today setting aside £1.8 billion to compensate victims of the Post Office Horizon scandal. Redress that is long overdue for the pain and injustice that they have suffered. Madam Deputy Speaker, the leadership campaign for the party opposite has now been going on for over 3 months. But in all that time, not one single apology for what they did to our country. Because the Conservative Party has not changed. But this is a changed Labour Party, and we will restore stability to our country once again. The scale and seriousness of the situation that we have inherited cannot be underestimated. Together, the hole in our public finances this year, which recurs every year, the compensation schemes that they did not fund, and their failure to assess the scale of the challenges facing our public services means that this budget raises taxes by £40 billion. Any Chancellor standing here today would have to face this reality. And any responsible Chancellor would take action. That is why today I am restoring stability to our public finances and rebuilding our public services. As a former economist at the Bank of England, I know what it means to respect our economic institutions. I want to put on record my thanks to the Governor of the Bank, Andrew Bailey, and to the Independent Monetary Policy Committee. Today, I can confirm that we will maintain the MPC's target of 2% inflation, as measured by the 12-month increase in the Consumer Prices Index.
Okay.
I want to thank James Bowler, the Permanent Secretary to the Treasury, and my team of officials. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would also like to thank my predecessors as Chancellor of the Exchequer for their wise counsel as I have prepared for this budget. In particular, I would like to thank the former Right Honourable Member for Spelthorne for his invaluable advice in this weekend's papers, where he concluded that his mini-budget, and I quote, wasn't perfect. Madam Deputy Speaker, in absolute agreement. Finally, I want to thank Richard Hughes and his team at the Office for Budget Responsibility for their work in preparing today's economic and fiscal outlook. Let me now take the House through that forecast. The cost of living crisis under the last government stretched household finances to their limit, with inflation hitting a peak of above 11%. Today, the OBR say that CPI inflation will average 2.5% this year, 2.6% in 2025, then 2.3% in 2026, 2.1% in 2027, 2.1% in 2028, and 2.0% in 2029.
Pure speculation.
Next,
you don't know.
To economic growth. Today's budget marks an end to short-termism. So I am pleased that for the first time, the OBR have published not only 5-year growth forecasts, but a detailed assessment of the growth impacts of our policies over the next decade too. And the new Charter for Budget Responsibility, which I am publishing today, confirms that this will become a permanent feature of our framework. The OBR forecast that real GDP growth will be 1.1% in 2024, 2.0% in 2025, 1.8% in 2026, 1.5% in 2027, 1.5% in 2028 and 1.6% in 2029. And the OBR are clear. This budget will permanently increase the supply capacity of the economy, boosting long-term growth. Every budget, it may sound shocking to them, but this government is boosting long-term economic growth. Every budget that I deliver will be focused on our mission to grow the economy. And underpinning that mission are the 7 key pillars of our growth strategy, developed and delivered alongside business, all driven forward by our excellent Financial Secretary to the Treasury. First, and most important, is to restore economic stability. That is my focus today. Second, increasing investment and building new infrastructure is vital for productivity. So we are catalysing £70 billion of investment through our National Wealth Fund. And we are transforming our planning rules to get Britain building again. Third, to ensure that all parts of the UK can realise their potential, we are working with the devolved governments and partnering with our mayors to develop local growth plans. Fourth, to improve employment prospects and skills, we are creating Skills England, delivering our plans to make work.
You still here, Morton? Are you liking what she's saying so far?
Pay and tackling economic inactivity. Fifth, we are launching our long-term modern industrial strategy and expanding opportunities for our small and medium-sized businesses to grow. Sixth, to drive innovation, we are protecting record funding for research and development to harness the full potential of the UK's science base. And finally, to maximise the growth benefits of our clean energy mission, we have confirmed key investments such as carbon capture and storage to create. I have concluded that in these difficult circumstances, while the cost of living remains high, will also rise by 4.1%, from around £11,400 per year to around £11,850 a year. So I have decided today to freeze fuel duty next year, and I will maintain with measures to reduce the cost of living. I've had to take some very difficult decisions on tax. I want to set out my approach to fuel duty. Baked into the numbers that I inherited from the previous government is an assumption that fuel duty will rise by RPI next year, and that the temporary 5p cut will be reversed. To retain the 5p cut and to freeze fuel duty again would cost over £3 billion next year. At a time when the fiscal position is so difficult, I have to be frank with the House that this is a substantial commitment to make. I have concluded that in these difficult circumstances, while the cost of living remains high, and with a backdrop of global uncertainty, increasing fuel duty next year would be the wrong choice for working people. It would mean fuel duty rising by 7p per litre. So I have decided today to freeze fuel duty next year, and I will maintain the existing
that was a given.
For another year too.
That was a given. We knew that was going to happen anyway, so shut up.
There will be no higher taxes at the petrol pumps next year. Madam Deputy Speaker, the last government made cuts of £20 billion to employees and self-employed national insurance in their final 2 budgets. These tax cuts were not honest. Because we now know that they were based on a forecast which the OBR say would have been materially different. It would have been materially different had they known the true extent of the last government's cover-up. Since July, I have been urged on multiple occasions to reconsider these cuts, to increase the taxes that working people pay and see in their payslips. But I have made an important choice today, to keep every single commitment that we made on tax in our manifesto. So I say to working people, I will not increase your national insurance, I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax. Working people will not see higher taxes in their payslips as a result of the choices that I am making today. That is a promise made and a promise fulfilled. But any responsible Chancellor would need to make difficult decisions today, to raise the revenues required to fund our public services and to restore economic stability. So in today's budget, I am announcing an increase in employers' national insurance contributions. We will increase the rate of employers' national insurance by 1.2 percentage points to 15% from April 2025. And we will reduce the secondary threshold, the level at which employers start paying national insurance on each employee's salary, from £9,100 a year to £5,000. This will raise £25 billion per year by the end of the forecast period. I know that this is a difficult choice. I do not take this decision lightly. We are asking...
I am still not sure how I feel about this one. Really not. It's going to hit a lot of different types of businesses, don't get me wrong, but I am still conflicted. Really am. It's the wrong type of capitalist you're going after there, Rachel, by the way. Just saying. I would know. There's a few more Marxists in the world.
Businesses to contribute more. And I know that there will be impacts of this measure felt beyond businesses too, as the OBR has set out today. But in the circumstances...
Order, Chancellor! Order! Our constituents are watching. They need to be able to hear the Chancellor. Simmer down. Chancellor.
But in the circumstances that I have inherited, it is the right choice to make. Successful businesses depend on successful schools. Healthy businesses depend on a healthy NHS. And a strong economy depends on strong public finances. If the party opposite chooses to oppose this choice, then they are choosing more austerity, more chaos, more instability. This is the choice that our country faces too. As I make this choice, I know it is particularly important to protect our smallest companies. So, having heard representations from the Federation of Small Businesses and others, I am today increasing the employment allowance from £5,000 to £10,500. This means 865,000 employers won't pay any national insurance at all next year. And over 1 million will pay the same or less than they did previously. This will allow a small business to employ the equivalent of 4 full-time workers on the national living wage without paying any national insurance on their wages. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me now come to capital gains tax. We need to drive growth, promote entrepreneurship and support wealth creation, while raising the revenue required to fund our public services and restore our public finances. Today, we will increase the lower rate of capital gains tax from 10 to 18% and the higher rate from 20 to 24%, while maintaining the rates of capital gains tax on residential property at 18 and 24% too. This means the UK will still have the lowest capital gains tax rate of any European G7 economy.
Should be higher. Listen to me, Rachel. Both of those should be higher. You need to tax the wealth in this fucking country, for fuck's sake. At least you're raising them. At least that's
Alongside these
something.
changes to the headline rates of capital gains tax, we are maintaining the lifetime limit for business asset disposal relief at £1 million to encourage entrepreneurs to invest in their businesses. Business asset disposal relief will remain at 10% this year before rising to 14% in April 2025 and to 18% from 2026-27, maintaining a significant gap compared to the higher rate of capital gains tax. Together, the OBR say that these measures will raise £2.5 billion by the end of the forecast. In a sign of this government's commitment to supporting growth and entrepreneurship, we have already extended the Enterprise Investment Scheme and the Venture Capital Trust schemes to 2035, and we will continue to work with leading entrepreneurs and venture capital firms to ensure that our policies support a positive environment for entrepreneurship in the UK. Next, inheritance tax. Only 6% of estates will pay inheritance tax this year. I understand the strongly held desire to pass down savings to children and grandchildren, so I am taking a balanced approach in my package today. First, the previous government froze inheritance tax thresholds until 2028. I will extend that freeze for a further 2 years until 2030. That means the first £325,000 of any estate can be inherited tax-free, rising to £500,000 if the estate includes a residence passed to direct descendants, and £1 million when a tax-free allowance is passed to a surviving spouse or civil partner. Second, we will close the loophole created by the previous government, made even bigger when the lifetime allowance was abolished, by bringing inherited pensions into inheritance tax from April 2027. Finally, we will reform agricultural property relief and business property relief. From April 2026, the first £1 million of combined business and agricultural assets will continue to attract no inheritance tax at all. But for assets over £1 million, inheritance tax will apply with a 50% relief at an effective rate of 20%. This will ensure that we continue to protect small family farms and three-quarters of claims unaffected by these changes.
Shut up, you rabble.
I also announce that we will apply a 50% relief in all circumstances on inheritance tax for shares on the alternative investment market and other similar markets, setting the effective rate of tax at 20%. Taken together, these measures raise over £2 billion by the final year.